Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha, and I'm here with our family of seekers, and we're reading through the Bhagavad Gita, verse by verse, discussing the meaning of this great ancient yogic text and its relevance to our lives. That's what we're doing here together, Monday and Thursdays at 7:30 a.m. This week, we're getting ready for our women's retreat at New Vrindavan. That's going to happen this Thursday through Sunday. I think we have about 60 women coming together here at New Vrindavan in West Virginia. And we're going to have just like a 4-day party celebration. The theme is women empowering women. And we're going to be doing all kinds of things, all kinds of fun things, all kinds of deep things. You know, we're going to sing kirtan. We're going to have a sound bath. We're going to have a paint and sip with mocktails, and we're going to have many connecting sessions as well. So I think there are still some tickets available if you want to come last minute, but message me because it's not online anymore. So just email or message Bhakti Women's Retreat at gmail.com, and also direct message me is great too. So yeah, it's super exciting. And today we are in chapter 11 of the Bhagavad Gita. We're in the chapter called the universal form. So Krishna is revealing to us this form of his that is just basically everything in the universe. And what we're going to talk about today, we're hearing Sanjaya's kind of perspective of it. He's at the beginning of the Gita, Sanjaya was talking to Dhritarashtra, is kind of explaining what's going on the battlefield. They're not there. They're over in Hastinapur. But Sanjaya has kind of this divine vision, and he can see what's going on there. So he's telling Dhritarashtra, he's telling him what's going on there. So we get the benefit of hearing from him today. And in that, we get to kind of see Arjuna's like physical reactions and when he sees this universal form. So it's like we get to kind of see it, the zoomed out version of what's going on here, as Arjuna is going through this experience. So those are the verses that we'll cover today. We'll start with the 9th verse. Today is where we're going to start, the 9th verse of chapter 11. And before we do that, Shraddhanjali, do you want to say our prayers for us?
Sure. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jana Jana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let me get my screen back up here. And we will start with the 9th verse. Let's see. Okay, let me go back just a couple. Whenever you're ready, Stella.
Okay. Sanjaya Vacha Evam Ukta Tato Rajan Mahayogeshvaro Hari Darsayamasa Partaya Paramam Rupam Esparam. Sanjaya said, O king, having spoken thus, the Supreme Lord of all mystic power, the personality of Godhead, displayed his universal form to Arjuna.
Thank you. Hold on, just a couple people entered the waiting room. Let me let them in real quick. Okay. Okay, so in this verse, well, let's just back up actually a little bit. Let's just back up a little bit to kind of the theme of what we're going to talk about today. I want to kind of reorientate this section to something that we can kind of relate to in our everyday lives, because the universal form is not so relatable to us necessarily, but it can be. So I want to kind of reorientate this section to that. I want to talk. I think a lot of us feel like, and I know I feel like this a lot of times. Like if I can just understand everything, what's going to happen, how things are going to unfold, I'll feel more at peace. Like if I just have some clarity, I can relax. Sometimes we feel like this. And we do this in so many areas of our lives, relationships, decisions, the future. We're always trying to piece things together so that we feel a little bit more steady. Because there's this subtle belief behind that. If I can just see clearly enough, then I'll feel okay. But what we're going to see in these verses, and this is what I really kind of want to bring our attention to as we're moving through these verses, is something very interesting. Arjuna actually does get to see everything. Arjuna does actually get to see everything. That's what the universal form is. It's like the universe all in one, right? And not like even just a little bit more clarity, but again, everything. And I want us to kind of zoom in on Arjuna's experience through this as he's going through this and experiencing everything, what we see in him, right? And that is when it's first revealed to him, he's going to feel overwhelmed. We're going to walk through that. And we're going to walk through kind of his physical emotions and his physical symptoms. And then we're going to arrive at, where he gets to after that, which is, sometimes us control freaks, when we get a little bit of control, we want more, and then we think, oh, I need just a little bit more. And then I feel more steady. And then I feel a little bit more peaceful. But what we see in Arjuna is when he sees everything, instead of it making him want more, it actually brings about like so much humility. And this is what I really want us to zoom in on and learn from in this passage of verses. Okay. So I wanted to kind of set that up. So bringing this back to verse 9, where we just went, chapter 11, verse 9. In this verse, again, Sanjaya is describing what's happening to Dhritarashtra. He says Krishna, who is the supreme lord of all mystic power, reveals his universal form to Arjuna. And this is an important phrase because just a few verses earlier, Arjuna actually says to Krishna, you can show me this form because you are Yogeshvara, which means the master of all mystic power. So what's happening here when Sanjaya is saying this, he's reinforcing that. He's saying, yes, this is who Krishna is. We may have heard of yogis having mystic abilities, doing things that seem almost impossible or even magical. We hear different stories of like yogis producing ash from their hands or just doing things that are like beyond normal explanation. And today this even exists. This even exists today. There's also a lot of fakes today, people that do it just for performance and it's more like magic, but there are yogis who still actually possess some of these incredible abilities. But the point is that Krishna isn't just another yogi with some powers. He's the source of all mystic power. He's the supreme yogi. So that's the point here that he's really making with this statement when he says Yogeshwari. Right? Like if anyone's capable of revealing something as vast and overwhelming as the universal form, it's him. And that's what's about to happen next. Okay, so in the following verses, Sanjaya is going to start describing what Arjuna actually sees. Okay. And
I'm just going to go straight to the English
on this great.
Verse.
Yeah.
Arjuna saw. Oh,
Sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, it's actually two verses, 10 and 11. Arjuna saw in that universal form unlimited mouths, unlimited eyes, unlimited wonderful visions. The form was decorated with many celestial ornaments and bore many divine upraised weapons. He wore celestial garlands and garments, and many divine scents were smeared over his body. All was wondrous, brilliant, unlimited, all expanding.
Thank you. So now Sanjaya starts describing what Arjuna's actually seen. And it's pretty overwhelming, really, what he's seen. He's seen these unlimited mouths, these unlimited eyes, unlimited forms in every direction. It's not just one body, it's like everything is contained within this form. It's hard for us to really even kind of imagine. And it's honestly it's beyond our even our perception, you know. And so he's, it's in Vedic culture when someone's honored or worshipped, they're beautifully decorated. So there's garlands, there's ornaments, fragrances, fine clothing. This is a way of expressing respect and reverence. But here it's not just one person being decorated. This form of Krishna is filled with all beauty, all beauty, all opulence, everything amazing all at once. And it's unlimited. It's expanding in every direction. It's again, it's hard for us to even picture because when we normally see a person, even this especially beautiful person, we take it in one form. Like there's a face, a body, a certain shape. But here, this idea completely breaks. Arjuna's seen countless faces, countless arms, countless legs, all at the same time. Weapons, ornaments, garlands, everything layered onto this one vast, all encompassing form. And it's not just a bigger version of something that we know, it's something that's completely beyond our normal way of seeing. And Arjuna's thinking, like, I've never seen anything like this before. Yeah. Okay, so let's see what happens next. Let's go to 11:12. When you're ready, Stella.
Divi Surya Sahasrasya Bhavad Yuga Pad Uthita Yadiba Sadrisai Syad Bastasya Mahatmanaha. If hundreds of thousands of suns were to rise at once into the sky, their radiance might resemble the effulgence of the Supreme Person in that universal form.
Thank you. So if okay, now in this verse, Sanjay is trying to describe the brightness of what Arjuna's seen. And honestly, he almost can't. So he gives an analogy. He says, imagine if hundreds of thousands of suns rose into the sky all at once. Even that might begin to resemble the radiance of the universal form. And even that is really hard to grasp because even one sun is powerful. We know we can't look at the sun. It's like it like blinds your eyes. It's anybody ever been like to the Caribbean in summertime? It's like it's burning, it's overwhelming. And in the Vedic understanding, when the universe is moving towards destruction at the end of the cycles, in between the yugas, but after one yuga, right before the next one, the sun's intensity actually increases. It becomes even more fierce, more consuming before it, everything burns up. So it's like imagine this kind of intensity, and then multiply it by thousands. So that's what Arjuna's seen. It's not just bright, it's beyond anything we've experienced. And it's like it can't even be described, at a certain point, like language just falls short. And when it comes to spiritual visions, like words can't fully capture the experience, they can't contain it. So these descriptions aren't really even meant to like perfectly explain what Arjuna saw, but they're more like pointers. They're trying to direct us towards something that ultimately really just has to be experienced, not understood. But we're doing our best here to paint this picture, to kind of understand a little bit of Arjuna's experience. So that will bring us to this next verse, 13. When you're ready, Stella.
At that time, Arjuna could see in the universal form of the Lord the unlimited expansions of the universe, situated in one place, although divided into many, many thousands.
Thank you. So in this verse, Sanjay is continuing to describe what Arjuna's seen. And now it becomes even more incredible. He says that Arjuna could see the entire universe, all its divisions, all its countless parts, situated in one place within Krishna's universal form. And just to zoom out here for a second again, Sanjaya himself, remember, he's not on the battlefield. He's sitting in the palace with Dhritarashtra. He's far away, in Hastinapur. The battle is on Kurukshetra. This is the battlefield. So they're kind of like a few hours apart by car. but by divine vision, again, he's able to see what's happening, and describe it. Sanjaya is. And what he's describing here is that Arjuna is seeing everything, the whole universe with all its variety and diversity contained within Krishna. And Arjuna and Krishna are sitting on the chariot. Others are on the battlefield. They can't see the form because Krishna only gave the vision to Arjuna. And so all the different expansions, all the different beings, all the different worlds, not scattered, but unified in one place. Okay. This is powerful because normally we experience life as fragmented. This person, this place, this situation. But here Arjuna is seeing that everything is actually connected. Everything is resting within one source. Krishna, who's described as the God of all gods, the mystic of all mystic, he's holding everything within himself. So this vision it isn't just overwhelming. It's revealing something really, really deep, that behind all of the diversity that we see, there's one underlying reality that's holding it all together. It's really beautiful. And now in this next verse, this is really like the mic drop verse of this section that we're talking about today, because we're going to see Arjuna's reaction. So we painted the picture, and that was really kind of the intention here with just those first few verses. It's just for us to really kind of get a little bit of a feel for Arjuna's experience, like a little bit of a feel, like a 5% feel is really where we're at here. But we could try to understand what's going on, what he's experiencing. And now we're going to go to 14. When you're ready, Stella.
Then, bewildered and astonished, his hair standing on end, Arjuna bowed his head to offer obeisances with folded hands, began to pray to the Supreme Lord.
Thank you. So now we see Arjuna's reaction. And it's intense. Right? He's not just impressed, he's completely overwhelmed. He's astonished. It says his hair is standing on end. So there's a physical reaction here. He bows his head, he folds his hands, and he begins to pray. And this is interesting. Arjuna asked to see this form. He asked to see this form, but it's important to understand, again, that he's not just asking for his own curiosity or personal clarity. He's asking because he wants to understand Krishna's position more fully, and also to establish for us, who God is. But even with this intention, when the reality is revealed, it's almost too much. It's like he can see it, but he can't hold it. And at this point, he's not seeing Krishna in his familiar form either. Krishna is his friend on the battlefield. They're intimate, they're buddies. But now all he can see is this vast, all-encompassing universal form. So naturally, his mood changes. His mood changes here. Before, Krishna and Arjuna had this relationship based on friendship. But, after Arjuna sees this, he's offering obeisances, with great respect, his hands are folded, he's praying, he's glorifying. And I want to, at this point in the scene, this is like an action movie unfolding that we're seeing happening here. But at this point, I want to kind of bring it back, to what we can learn from this. Back to our theme from the beginning, because we often think that if we could just understand everything, if we can just see things clearly, we'll feel peaceful. But here, even when everything is revealed to Arjuna. He sees the past, the present, the future. He sees the outcome of the war, everything. He's not peaceful. He's overwhelmed. So we start to kind of understand here a little bit, maybe peace doesn't come from knowing everything. Maybe the mind can't even hold that kind of vastness. And what we see Arjuna do here instead, which is something I want us all to walk home with today, is that he folds his hands. It makes him very humble. It makes him very surrendered. He folds his hands, not from a place of control, but from this place of humility. Not from a place of figuring everything out, but from acknowledging something so much greater. And this moment is important because it does help Arjuna understand that Krishna is God. I mean, he already knew that, but this is kind of the progression that we're going through. But what's interesting is that even that realization by itself isn't what brings him peace. Because knowing that God is everything is different than feeling connected to him. And this is where we're really trying to get with this practice of bhakti. The difference between knowing that God is everything is important. It's a step. We need to know that God is everything. But that's not the ultimate. We shouldn't stop there. We shouldn't just be satisfied with that. Because real peace, this real peace that we're looking for, this real fulfillment of the heart that we're looking for, comes from having a connection to God. And this is what the Gita is ultimately guiding us towards. Not just understanding God, but relating to him. And this is what we're going to continue to see here as this chapter unfolds, because it brings it right back. Krishna, he comes right back to his two-handed form, where Arjuna can have relationship with him, and they can have this loving reciprocal exchange. And this shows up in our lives too. Maybe in a little different way, because we're not actually seeing the universal form per se. Right? But this same tendency to want to understand everything, to want to control how things go, to feel like if I can just get clarity, I'll feel at peace. To want to okay. And this actually came up for me this weekend. I had quite an interesting weekend this weekend, because my daughter was baptized. My husband's Catholic. My daughter was baptized. And before she was born, this was actually something that my husband and I would argue about, because I was just not into it. I was not into her being baptized. I had some religious trauma from my childhood that I just was really fearful of, her getting kind of involved, into a church for the wrong reasons, and kind of getting her heart crushed, and, all of those things. But it was funny. After she was born, I mean, not funny, but interesting. After she was born, something kind of just shifted in me when she became this real person, it wasn't and in that moment, it's not even she's mine. I didn't feel like my daughter is mine for me to control, for me to hold. I really felt in my daughter's birth, she's this being for me to care for. She's entrusted to me, but I don't own her. And even putting some of my own stuff on her, is really not even fair. I really just saw her for this beautiful child of God, like this magnificent child of God, as her own person with her own soul, who's going to make her own choices. And so that was like one shift. It's just like awe inspiring. Like this is God's creation. This isn't mine. And then I also kind of start to see my husband differently, and his sincerity and his faith, and how much he's just like really grown in his faith through our marriage, and the love behind why this particular ceremony mattered so much to him. So even instead of feeling like tense or resistant, it was actually just like the most beautiful day. I was able to go to this church and really just appreciate the sentiment behind what they're doing, and the love behind it. And I really felt that from my husband too. And it felt really peaceful to just be there and support him and my daughter in that. And I walked away. I was telling my husband this at lunch afterwards. I walked away realizing, like, I don't really need to control what path she takes. I don't need to decide that I have that all figured out. I don't have to know. I don't have to, I can just trust that she's a child of God. She's not mine. I do my best. I do my part. I love her. I try to guide her. I try to be an example of that love in her life. And I see my husband doing that same thing. And in a way, it felt better that she has these two people in her life who genuinely try to follow their path with sincerity, follow their path with a full heart, than us fighting over the right way to love God. It's like it's really out of my hands, the path that she chooses. She might not even choose a path. She might even choose that she's not going to pursue spiritual life in this life. And that also is part of God's plan for her, that for me to just accept. But the point is that I need to have a little bit of faith in God, and trust that he's also guiding her. And this is really where peace came about. It wasn't in me wanting to see or control. It was in trusting the one who holds everything. And this is what Arjuna is also going to experience in this chapter, what we're going to see Arjuna experience. This shift from confusion to clarity, from control to trust. Even when everything is revealed, peace doesn't come from trying to grasp it. It comes from a shift. It comes from a shift from control to humility. Okay? From trying to understand everything to recognizing something greater, and relating to that, trusting in that. So this is a really powerful thing that we see here in the Gita. Arjuna sees it all more than we can even imagine or fathom or have the capacity to really even relate to. But in that, he folds his hands, he bows. It makes him humble, right? And where we're going to see it going next, it makes him really just crave this close relationship, this connection with God. It makes him realize, like, this is what he actually really wants. Right? He doesn't need to know it all. He doesn't need to have this revealed in front of him, who's going to win, how's this. No, the trust that he has in this relationship is enough. This is what brings him peace. This is what fills him up. Just this trust in this relationship that he has with Krishna. And this is what he wants. And this is what Krishna wants from us. At this point, I want to open it up to see if is there anything that anybody wants to share. Any reflections?
I love how you brought that to not having to see like the universal form of the rest of your daughter's life. Like you didn't need the clarity of her path, whatever that's going to be, and we don't know. Um, but it's much more peaceful to just trust in that journey. And we also brought our kids up with both. They were all baptized. They went to church every Sunday. We did Krishna's
Wow.
Sunday school curriculum at home. They've been to, like they practice both. And, that's the thing. You could, they learn to see the, the base, the God's MO through it all. They were able to understand. And it's true. I think, giving children some foundation allows them to choose in a better way once they're grown up because they know what it is. They've experienced it and they have some baseline. Um, and yeah, even our Lutheran church even had our youngest Irene come in to talk to young parents about raising kids in a multi-faith household because it wasn't one or the other. There was no conflict, there was no competition, there was no better or worse. It was just what's in the heart of the parents that we want to share with them
Yeah. Wow, that's
without knowing what they would do with it.
right. Right. Yeah. Oh, I really felt that yesterday I mean, it's kind of been a progression for me to get there, but I really felt that yesterday. And I really felt like whatever path she chooses, what would make me happiest if her heart was really in it.
Yeah.
And yeah, because that's what makes all the difference. Yeah, thank you. So nice. Anuradha says, wanting to know everything is my albatross. So needed to hear this. Yeah, that's such a tough one. Wanting to know everything. Do you want to say anything else around that, Anuradha? It's nice to see you this morning.
Hi, good morning. Sorry, I'm trying to multitask and listen to this wonderful class, but yeah, I just this I can't believe I didn't see it like this before that, Arjuna saw the entire universal form and he was still confused. And he just felt so small in that moment, thinking about my life and my problems and my challenges. And I just felt like such a wave of relief, like what if, this what if moment. So yeah,
Mm,
thank you.
yeah. Yeah. Sometimes we believe so wholeheartedly that knowing, how everything's going to turn out, it is what will bring us happiness, that we put all of our effort and energy into that. And then what ends up happening is we're just like stressed and full of anxiety and, and, and just like over endeavoring, worn out. And this is the mistake. This is the mistake because there's so much more available for us just in connection with God. Like, to speak of if we took half of that energy, of us trying to know, pursue, feel stable, if we took half of that energy and put it into relationship with God, chanting God's names, kirtan, things that connect us to God, things that grow our relationship with God, like a relationship investment, how much more actually peaceful we would be inside. And actually, what I've seen is that then somehow everything just works out. And I say somehow, but it's that relationship. Krishna comes in and he takes care of things for us in a way that for me has been, like, in my experience, has been like 10 times better than anything I could have arranged myself. Like things I was like, I'll be like, wow, I didn't even think of that. That is magical. To the point where now I feel like half of life is just like sitting back and enjoying the show, right? Like, wow, this is crazy the way that Krishna is orchestrating this. Let's see what the plan is. Let's see how he arranges things. Because we learn I don't have to be the driver. I don't have to be so focused on where I'm going and how I'm going to get there and how I'm going to put gas in my car, and just take a little bit of that anxiety, that angst, put it into relationship with God and see what happens. Because this is exactly what we're going to see Arjuna do. He didn't see everything and say, show me more. Oh, I only saw, he didn't ask a bunch of questions about what he saw. And, we're going to see, he gets on his knees, he bows down, he prays, he glorifies. And then he's like, and then Krishna comes back to his two-handed form for him. Like, he just wants his buddy back. He's like, I just want connection. I trust you. I don't even need to see all of this. I'm good to go. Yeah. What do you think, Katie?
Hi, Krishna. Thank you. I think this is so helpful. Because last night I got frustrated with my sister again. And some of it has to do with, how it's becoming more clear how like her continual so long alcoholism is just like making it really hard for her to understand. Like you have to really repeat and anyway, but and when I was having to vent and share with my husband, I said to him, I'm not going to figure out the solution tonight. Like, I know that, because I think it's just so helpful to realize it's okay not to know what to do yet or now, and that's hard for me. And it has, it's such like a long ingrained thing. Like my experience and feeling has been that she's mistreated me my entire life, my whole life. And that's I'm mad about that, and it feels confusing to be like, I need to express this somehow. If I can't express it to her, like it's got to come out, like, and there needs to be some sort of solution in a way, especially now that like the priority is little devotees in growing in me that need peace and a more stress-free situation. Yeah. So, and I realized I'm like, I might need help. Like I was saying to him, I may need you or my brother to like talk to her for me, or like, I want to talk to my brother and get some advice, or, like we can't do it alone. Yeah. And it's just so helpful to hear that I don't need to figure it out right now. And I'm not going to know like what the solution is. And it's okay. Like, I feel like, when I feel like guilty, like keeping myself away from her, but really that's just learning better boundaries is part of that. Yeah. So, and also the main thing is I need to figure out how to like not just let it get me so frustrated and stressed out. So this is really, really helpful. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we all feel for you in some capacity, or like can relate to you in some capacity, because it's such a tough spot. So many emotions, so many things, and we do have a tendency to just want to like trudge forward and be the doer and make things happen and take charge, and there's a time for that, and that's good energy too. But sometimes when there's just so much emotion around it, it's like we're feeling so many different things. We see Arjuna here. He's not clear. He's like bewildered. He gets to this place of wonder, but he's experiencing a lot of things. Sometimes in that moment, the best thing to do is just to get down on our knees, right? and glorify the one who has all the answers, and acknowledge that, maybe that's not me. And actually that's a really sweet thing.
Yeah.
Because
and it was,
yeah.
I'm sorry. It was very helpful.
Go.
Like when I got home, and my husband was still at work, I was thinking of calling our other sister, and I was like, this is just like a chain of complaints. Like, so instead I did some kirtan, and like that really helped. And I think also I need to acknowledge and like, that it's very, like you said, like it's very like layered, with a lot of different emotions. And I need to be okay with like, I'm like, I don't want to be around her. She's not nice. She doesn't treat me well. And it's more like, I don't care. But also there's a part of me that's like grieving our relationship that I need to like step a little out from, and like, let that be there too. And not like, just pretend it's not there. in a way. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you just described is it's just like part of the human experience is we just get jumbled with all of these
Yeah.
emotions and torn all these different ways. And honestly, this is why we need God. This
Yeah.
is because that relationship is what brings about clarity. And the more that we lean into God during these times, during these times when we don't have the clarity and we feel like just like a mess of tension and anger and resentment and fear, and this is when we really need to reach out, just like you did in reach out in kirtan, however we reach out to God and seek that clarity, seek that shelter. And to the degree that we do that, he will reciprocate. It will come. It might take a little bit of time. We can't expect to like pray and then the next day wake up and we're like, oh, clear. Like
But
I
isn't
feel
it
like this.
amazing how like the next morning there's a really helpful verse?
Yeah, he'll give us that like little breadcrumbs, like come this way. Let me show you. Let me be there for you. I feel like that was even my experience of this baptism journey because it started way back. I mean, it started when she was in my womb, these discussions, and there was so much fear around it, for me. And now, it's probably 2 years later, and yesterday was so peaceful. It was so peaceful. So God can do this. We can't. We think we can, and we end up just like more lost and stressed and confused as ever. Yeah. See, Narayani says it just made me think of the trust I have in my guru, Maharaj. That's beautiful. You are fortunate. Shraddhanjali says, Shri Krishna is the driver of Arjuna's chariot. We can make him the driver of our lives. Krishna, take the wheel. Yeah, exactly. This is where the Gita is trying to bring us. Exactly. Gita in action. Anybody else want to share anything that's on their heart? I see Aaron. I see Nancy. These are some of our.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, I love all the discussion and just think, if I knew everything, it'd be a real problem. And I really like the fact that this section where it's showing the universal form is only a few verses. It could go on for pages and pages and pages, and the more it would go on, the less wonder I would have, I think. I mean, sorry, it's my life on the telephone. Um, it's wonderful because it really makes me just say, hey, what is faith? Faith is a belief in something I can't feel, I can't fathom, I can't put a box around it, and therefore I let go. It's my surrender. And it's exactly what Katie's going through, the surrender of letting go of somebody that she loves and having faith that Krishna's going to come along and take care of it. And it's not necessarily going to be the way we would want to see it being taken care of and how it's going to look. But in the end, it's going to be handled, and having faith that everything's going to turn out okay, whatever that means, is really important. I had mentioned that my brother had had a traumatic brain injury, and I thought that he was going to not be able to recover. And last week, after 5 weeks going through sepsis and pneumonia and UTIs on top of everything, went and saw him, and he's starting to walk, and he knew me, and it was like, okay. And the whole time that this whole process, I've just been praying, Krishna, Radha, please just be with him. Just let him know he's not alone. I don't know what the outcome should be, but just make sure that he has a sense of your presence. And I really believe that. And for me too, because the more I pray those prayers, the more I believe that Krishna's present in my life in all things. And I don't have to try to manipulate, might be a strong word, but even if I have good intentions, I want the outcome to be one way. Last night I spoke at a detox, and I asked how many people have been in detox already, and there were about 10 people. 8 of them raised their hand, and one guy started speaking. I just have to give up. I know I have to give up. He's been in a detox 27 times, right? And sitting there saying, I don't understand what you could possibly get out of this. You might as well just run the sessions. Why don't you surrender? And I said those things to him. There's a higher power that's waiting for you to surrender to this process, and we're here to help you. But we get stuck. We get stuck like Dhritarashtra. I just can't see. You're telling me all this, but I'm not willing to actually bring all this information in from Sanjaya that there is this ultimate. I'm just going to okay, that was good information. Now we'll go on to me controlling the world. And it's not a healthy place for any of us to be. I can say for myself, I really don't believe that. And so I have a lot of compassion for everyone going through dealing with loved ones that are struggling with recovery, but we have to make sure we take care of ourselves. That's the most important thing. So thank you so much for this class. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Well, really nice. Thank you for all that wisdom, Nancy. Yeah, and it's sometimes it's easy to look at people like, people that are in recovery or what word did you use the 27 times? What word did you use? What did you say he had been?
They were in the detox for the 27.
Detox. Yeah, things like that, and we think, oh, well, I don't have those problems. I'm not, I don't struggle with drugs or alcohol but the reality is, like those people that go through that are very fortunate souls, because it's such an opportunity to confront, some of these behaviors that are creating distance between them and God. And really, sometimes the only difference between us and them is that what their drug of choice has gotten them so low that they become completely non-functional, or parts of their lives just fall apart that they don't have any choice but to confront it. But the reality is that all of us have some kind of drug of choice, even if it's not, an intoxicant, an external intoxicant.
How about ego?
Yeah.
How many times? More than 27 times have I taken my will back. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And because it hasn't like completely dismantled other parts of our lives, then we're still semi-functional. We don't, sometimes you don't have such an opportunity to really confront it because it's not confronting you so abruptly. But it's true for all of us. We all can surrender a little bit more. We all can let go a little bit more. And to the degree that we do, we will be more peaceful and more connected. And life will just become a dance. It'll become a dance instead of us so invested personally in all the ups and downs. We're shackled to this roller coaster of emotional highs and lows. We're just like witnessing the show, like, oh, that's funny how that turned out. I wonder what Krishna's plan is there. It's just this beautiful dance that we're watching life put on in front of us, and Krishna's the conductor, Krishna's the choreographer. And to the degree that we surrender, we'll have that opportunity to view things like that. It will evolve, that perspective will evolve and life will become so much sweeter. What do you think, Kalachandji? Haven't heard from you today either.
I'm just really appreciating hearing everybody. Thanks. I don't have any special thoughts. I'm just really raring to get home.
Thank you. Are you at the airport, Kalachandji?
I am.
Okay. Okay. Safe travels. Safe travels
Thank
home.
you. I'm so glad I was able to catch this. I really appreciate it. Such a great way to start every day.
We're so glad you're here as well.
Everybody's in the beginning.
Well, we have a few minutes left if anybody else wants to share. I don't want to move on yet because I want to kind of stay on this theme, but we can end early too.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So this is a huge topic for me, the surrender. Talk about addictions. I can relate to the sibling who is caught up in their own trauma numbing. And it was a very hard struggle in the beginning for me to watch him suffer in the way that he does and push us out of his life and make my life miserable for most of my life. There was a nice window, we were friends, but then that changed. And now it's been about 15 years and he's finally coming back around. So in that 15 years, I found Krishna consciousness and I realized that it was his journey and his path. And there was nothing I could do as much as I wanted to and tried to help him. All I could do was just be there and be patient and be ready to receive him when he was ready to show up again. So I can relate to that really painful feeling of loss of sibling relationship and the pain they cause. And so I'm appreciating that sharing very much. And in my own life, I'm looking at my surrender and my trauma response, which is distraction. And I do that mostly through work. So I give all of myself to my work, to my clients, and I am exhausted and depleted at the end of each day, but I know I've served someone and helped them, and while that's good, why am I so exhausted and depleted? Why is my service not as fulfilling as I imagine it to be? And I had support from Malini Devi Dasi yesterday, and we were looking at how much Krishna has given me. I'm materially comfortable. I have these amazing devotees in my life, Veda Sara and Govinda and Malini Devi Dasi, and I'm dear friends with them. I can call them anytime. They're ready to support me. They reach out to me on a regular basis. You do too, Radha. And Krishna, he's just giving me everything I need. But I'm so busying myself and distracting myself from him and all of these beautiful offerings and not tending to myself, to my soul, to my service of devotion. And so I'm pushing him away unnecessarily. And it must be some of my own trauma, probably with my own father's inability to be emotionally present with me. So I don't know how to receive that. I don't know how to receive Krishna's love and tenderness, or really anyone else's love and tenderness. So I just go into this intense service, work. It's a service that I do, but it's just work. Just work. And so this has been a very helpful class to hear. And you kept giving space to share, and I didn't want to share, but thank you. I love what you shared with your daughter, that she's not yours, and that you get to just watch and support her discover herself with Krishna's guidance and presence and his plan. which is so exciting to hear for her to come into who she is without the pressure of your intention for her and your imagination for what her life should be and how she should experience life, or how to protect her from your own traumas or your experiences, similar ones to yours. It's just been a really beautiful class to hear from everyone, and to try and let that sink in and absorb how I want to move forward and surrender more and relax into that and trust Krishna and not feel like I have to do it all myself and I can't rely on anyone else and that it's all up to me. And it just isn't. It's not up to me at all. So thank you for this class.
Wow. That was so powerful, Kelly. Thank you for sharing so vulnerably. And you're not alone. So many of us are just right there with you. And what a beautiful example of work, where these things that culturally are, healthy and encourage people, encourage. Sometimes being a workaholic is like glorified, but it's so introspective for you to really take that a couple levels deeper and say, what am I trying to avoid by over endeavoring in this particular area of my life? Where could I soften more? Where could I surrender more? Where could I connect more? I mean, that's like the dawn of a spiritual awakening, or like the next version of yourself and connection to God. So beautiful, beautiful things are happening for you. We're here for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so nice. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for coming and sharing your hearts. This isn't easy stuff. It's not easy stuff, as we've heard from all of us, struggling with these things. And they're easy things to just gloss over, but at the end of the day, these verses are so potent with this nectar, with this wisdom, teaching us how to live, teaching us how to be. And not because, Krishna is selfish and wants us to just all glorify him, but because this is what really is satisfying to the heart. Living in this way, this is what really inhibits, this is what really allows us to connect authentically with ourselves and with God. This is what this is teaching us. Maybe peace isn't about having everything figured out or seeing everything clearly. Maybe it's about recognizing that we were never meant to hold it all. We're not even designed to hold it all. And instead of trying to control every outcome and over endeavoring, and we can soften a little, and we can place our trust in something greater. Because when we do that, we don't lose anything at all. We actually gain a kind of steadiness that doesn't depend on things going our way. So thank you all. Thank you for coming and sharing your hearts and being a part of this journey together in a real, vulnerable and transformational way. We inspire each other. You all inspire me. Thank you.